Welcome into our webinar today on teaching rhythmic subdivisions at the piano, especially at the elementary level when we're dealing with our elementary students who have just learned basic rhythms in 2/4/3/4 and 4/4 time, and we see that eighth notes are starting to come up in their method book, and we just don't want to just drop that idea of eighth notes right on top of them when we turn the page. We actually want to prepare them for eighth notes in advance of the time that they're going to actually see it in their method book. It'll make things go so much easier for them if you do that, and I'm really big on that. So I get this question a lot. How do you teach subdivision of the quarter note effectively and efficiently so they can really grasp it more readily? And there's two things that I really want to make sure my elementary students have a handle on before I launch into eighth notes and how to clap, count them, whatever. I want to make sure they have an absolute awareness of steady pulse. I want to make sure that they can play their quarter note pieces, quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, rather steadily with good, even counting with it, okay? And that they have a good stronghold on that very secure, even pacing of the quarter beat. So before I launch into any eighth note pieces, I make sure they can do that, okay? The second key to learning how to subdivide well is the ability, the student's ability to vocalize and internalize pulse. They work hand in hand together. So by vocalize, what do I mean? Well, I mean that they must be able to say their beats very steadily aloud. I'm a big enforcer on counting aloud. I usually have my students do, what kind of counting do we call it? Value counting. Value counting, where they count one, a feeling of one length, right? One for quarter notes, 1, 2 for half notes, 1, 2, right? And every time they see a dotted half, it's 1, 2, 3, and then whole notes, it's always 1, 2, 3, 4. I start my primary level students with value counting. I have found it invaluable, no pun intended, okay, that they actually recite the length of a note very, very precisely and not have to be so confused as to who's beat 1 and who's beat 2 and who's beat 4 and have that extra impediment added onto the fact that they're trying to count the value. So I do that for a good long while. And a little later, usually late elementary, early intermediate, I do switch over to some metrical counting. More quickly, I switch over to 3/4 metrical counting, and we can talk more about that in the Q&A. All right, so I have them vocalize as they're counting those basic rhythms. They've got to be solid on the vocalization with that absolute steadiness so they can actually hear and confirm that they are giving it good attention, proper length of each note. So why is it that this out loud, counting is so important? Well, it's because it comes right out of their mouth, right? And they have to really have an inner sense of steadiness first, already computed here, before they project it, okay? Otherwise, they cannot recite it steadily unless they're already aware of steadiness here, right? Clicking along before it comes out, okay? So their inner ear, I know when they're counting, I'm aware that their inner ear is already plugged in to steadiness or what is steady, okay? That's real confirmation that you get. Now, on the flip side of that, when they hear themselves counting, they can tell from the outcome, right? If they listen to the outcome, listen to it very acutely, they can tell, oh, that was steady. Okay, so they're confirming by hearing, the result, okay? So they listen to those measured results that they're producing, and they can determine, yep, it's steady, it's good, okay? So they've got the inner ear and the outer ear working to their advantage of steadiness, okay? All in all, they're listening very acutely, right? Which is so important for subdivisions anyway, because subdivisions are going to require what? A lot of precision, true? Equal precision. So let's get them plugged in with the basic notes first. Okay. All right. The second part that I mentioned was the internalization. They must be able to internalize steady beat. And by that, I mean they need to feel it physically by showing me some kind of body beat, okay? Uh, uh, Hand clapping with gesture, perhaps, right? Walking, right? Down the hallway with you at lessons and walking back with a sense of steady beat, right? Playing an instrument, whatever it might be, okay? They need to produce it through the body, right? So they can feel steadiness. That's the internalization, okay? So I want to be certain that they can do all of this before I teach them subdivisions. Everybody with me? Let me know in the chat if this is making sense so far. Okay. Hey, Elizabeth, nice to see you. Thanks for joining on Facebook. We're talking subdivisions. Okay, today I am not going to spend a lot of time about getting students to count aloud and, what if they're resistant? What do you do? Okay, that's another pain point. We'll deal with that. In fact, let's put that on our list of topics for future pain points. Okay, we'll deal with that on a different webinar. But for now, I'm just telling you that I'm a big enforcer in my studio of having students count aloud because I just feel like there's really no way around it. I have all my students do it with their clapping, with their tapping, hands together tapping later on, with their pieces. I just have them do it. Boy, does it save me a lot of time and trouble, and it really accelerates their learning when their rhythm is really secure. How many of you found that out, that when their rhythm is really secure and tight and they have that really high level awareness of steadiness, that things just go so much easier? Okay, for sure, definitely. So why does this counting aloud really matter? I mean, we're not doing it to just bug our students, right? No. Counting beats aloud is what creates pulse. When you're hearing yourself count aloud, you're hearing the pulse, okay? Or you're setting the pulse, right? While you're doing your subdivisions, okay? And students have got to feel pulse constantly when they're playing the piano. You just have to feel pulse. Everything they do is emitted from pulse. Okay, so breathe that into them from day one. I find that if you make counting aloud, clapping and counting, tapping and counting, playing and counting, if you make that routine and you're teaching and you're breeding that in your students from lesson to lesson, right? They come to expect it and they don't resist you.